Hatapu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haru Nefer. This is Kasank Ma Kaparu with another video for you. And in this video, I want to talk about how to get revenge or justice against your enemies. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live or when I upload recorded videos. And we have free ebooks that will expand on my spiritual teachings. So if you're interested in knowing more, click on the links below and you can download them and start reading them today. And if you're not already, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can do so for as little as $1 or $20 per month. You will get exclusive access to instructional videos like how to perform a ritual, how to invoke spirits. You will get access to hypnotherapy videos to rid yourself of any negative habits, such as overeating, or to be more confident. So it's all that's available to you as a Patreon supporter. You can cancel at any time. So welcome, my Magi's. I have an interesting subject I want to talk to you about, and I'm not going to stay too long on here because I have some other stuff I want to take care of today. Now, I met this woman, and she's like a starch feminist, okay? Which, hey, I don't care. I don't believe in titles, you know, because that's only a left brain attribute that keeps us separated. See, when you do away with ego, then you come in contact with source energy, and then you understand that we all are one. And there's nothing more dangerous to the established order is to doing away with the ego. See, they have to feed your ego. They want you to placate to the ego. Because when you're doing that, you're trapped in left brain thinking. You're trapped in the physical. They don't want you venturing over to the metaphysical or to the right brain, because then that is the seat of unity. Because the right brain seeks to find how things are alike. The left brain looks at how things are dislike. And right now, the world is ruled by the left brain, and all we can see are how things are separated and dislike one another. Because God is the ultimate unifier. In fact, in the Osirian tradition, Osar Set, Osir is known as the uniter of the left of the upper and lower parts of Egypt, but also the left and right hemispheres of the brain. That is how brilliant our ancestors were, because they knew that you could not function properly if you use both sides of your brain to become an integrated brain thinker. But you have Western man who thinks that the only thing that's important is the left brain. He thinks that the only thing is real is that which can be inputted through the five senses, and that is a lie. Because the metaphysical world is just as real as the concrete. And when you do away with ego, which is an impediment to unification, to unity, see, when you get rid of the ego, you are dealing with the Amen, the hidden state, that which is not perceivable, that which is your true essence. You are consciousness. You cannot see you. You cannot experience you. You can't. You're immaterial. And that's exactly what the substance of God is made of. Nothing, nothing, nothing. God is the no thingness, the nothingness from which everything comes. And only now, surprise, surprise, modern science is experimenting with bringing something out of nothing. They now have proven that you could actually bring something out of nothing. And that's how God created this existence, out of nothing, out of him, her. So I'm talking to this starch feminist, and she's telling me, why don't I have my mates on the channel? And I said, no. I told them it's forbidden for them to come on my channel. She was like, well, then you are part of the problem. You are part of the patriarchy. I said, I didn't establish the patriarchy. The patriarchy was established by white males. I'm a victim of the patriarchy. She couldn't understand that. We went tit for tat. I started using her own language against her. Told her how in Kemet, ancient Egypt, the women, it was a matrilineal system, that the women had more rights than the women in Europe society at the same time period. Women in Kemet could own land, could become queens, could become rulers, could become kings. Yes, I said it right. They could become king. The queen king, Hatshepsut, researcher, she had no mate. So she assumed the title of king. And she did so because she was dealing with foreign dignitaries who were patriarchal, who were um, chauvinistic, and they were not going to bow before a black woman. So she took on the beard and the um, outfit of a king. And she was known as the first king queen that ruled Kemet, Hatshepsut. Do the research. Now, had this feminist known the truth about why I say so, maybe she would have shut up, but I felt no responsibility to explain myself to her. I let her walk away in her ignorance. You see, when you know as much as I know, and when you put that information out on the channel for mass consumption, you get a lot of people who don't like that, especially the ruling elite. So you get threats. And it's very interesting that I made a short film that got over 1 million views on YouTube called White Power, which exposed the fact that the white supremacist movement was created by the ruling elite and that those Klansmen, skinheads, are merely puppets of the ruling elite. That film exposed that. And if you go look at all of the comments in the comment box, thousands of comments, not one threatened my life, not one. But as soon as I get on this channel to disseminate the wisdom of our ancient ancestors, do I get threats? So why then would I put my family in danger by putting them on the channel? Why would I expose them to that? And not many people know this, but I had a talk recently with, well, not recently, it was about a year ago, with Tommy Sotomayor. And he has one of the biggest YouTube channels out there. And Tommy gets all kinds of threats and this and that, and they threaten his daughter. So I spoke to Tommy about a couple of things. I spoke to him about the type of women that he goes after. I told him, I said, you know, it's what the type of women you go after are very low life women, and that's going to do you no good. And then I spoke to him about these threats he was getting and death threats and things of that nature, especially when it came to his daughter. And my um, response to him was puzzling. See, he thought I was going to side with him and say, oh, wow, you know, those guys are really wrong for threatening your daughter and putting up pictures of your daughter on the internet and where she is, the address and all that. No, I chastised Tommy Sotomayor. I said, you should have never had your daughter on the channel. You should have never exposed her to such dangers. It's fine for you to be an internet personality, but your daughter is someone you need to protect. Why are you putting her on camera? Now he's experiencing the fallacy of his ways. So he put her in harm's way. So I will not do that. Had this feminist been aware of that fact, all she thought about was, oh, he's part of the patriarchy suppressing his mates by not allowing them to come on to the channel. And I say, yes, you darn right I'm not allowing them to come on the channel. I'm fine with me getting the threats, but I'm not fine with them getting the threats. Do you understand? And I further went and I talked to Tommy and I said, Tommy, the reason why you're getting so many threats, it's not because of your content. It has nothing to do with your content. It's because they're jealous of you. Now, this is airing a little bit of the dirty laundry among black people. Black people have a very bad habit of being jealous of one another. So I said, has nothing to do with your content. They're jealous of you because you're making a lot of money. You have over 1 million subscribers. And the type of people you appeal to, the type of people you speak to are low life. They're Sahu. So you're going to have to be careful. But I'm not going to put him down because I'll tell you what, I think he has handled it very well. I don't think I could handle it as well. Looking at the type of threats he gets, the challenges he experiences on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm not here saying I support him. Of course not. I'm not saying I support him, but I'm just saying that he has handled it with a very cool, rational mind. Not a lot of people could. Imagine going someplace, finding out that people are following you, taking pictures of your family, posting them on the internet, posting the address and social security number on the internet. Imagine having that. How could you live? So I applauded him for being at peace. Amen. Which brings me to the subject matter at hand. There are times in life when you are going to have people who want to do you harm, whether it be physical or verbal altercations. They want to do you harm. That is just how it is. There's nothing you probably did. You may be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and then a robbery occurs at a bank, and the bank robber trips over you, gets angry, and then shoots you in the leg. You were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Or you just may have some people who genuinely are doing wrong by you. And because we are magicians, we understand that we need to deal with the situation. You see, these pimp pastors need someone to put a foot up their ass. Let me say that again. These pimp pastors need somebody to put a foot up their ass because they go around teaching the congregation to say the most ridiculous things. A young man bursts into a black church and shoots everybody up. He's a white supremacist. The aftermath, some of the members of the church walk by, see him handcuffed, and say, I forgive you. I forgive you. What kind of nonsense is that? You are an idiot. But that's what these pastors teach. They're stupid. I forgive you. He must be thinking, well, goddamn, I shut up the whole church and you saying you forgive me? What do I have to do to get you to hate me? Meanwhile, those same congregation members are going to church the next Sunday, sit there and talk bad about Lisa, talk bad about Wanda, gossip, hate on each other, but they forgive the terrorist who shot up the church. I forgive you. I forgive you. I love you for shooting up the church. I forgive you. Because they're stupid. Their mind is gone. Because it's the blind leading the blind. The minister, he know not what he does. He is too stupid to understand. Forgiveness is something that is earned. You don't just give it away. You understand? Now, let me explain something to you. When I first got into magic, the first thing I learned was how to manifest money. The next thing I learned is how to protect myself. I learned spells because that is very, very important. Because as I said, you are going to have situations at the job where people hate on you. Your boss may hate on you. You may get fired because you're a woman. You may get fired because you're Asian or black. Had some woman say that I hit on her. I said, excuse me? Excuse me? I hit on you? I don't think so. You did really well on the report. So I bought something for you, which was a pen holder to place on your desk. That doesn't mean I have affection for you. So I said, oh, that's how we're going to play it, huh? That's how we're going to play it. Get my crystals and stuff out and say, all right, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do it. Did my Ma'at ritual. You know what I'm saying? Come to find out, she had a long history of doing that, making false allegations. This is the Me Too era. Men have to watch out. You see, there's going to be always somebody out to get you, especially if you are speaking truth, especially if you are exposing the matrix. I love that. I love Alfred in Batman. Forgot which one it's called, but it's the Batman with the Joker. And Alfred said to Bruce Wayne, because Bruce Wayne was upset that the Joker was doing all of this evil in Gotham City. So the gangs paid the Joker to get rid of Batman. So Bruce Wayne was like, why would these low-life criminal people align themselves with the Joker? So Alfred said, well, what did you expect? What did you expect from these gangsters? You pushed them. You pushed them. And now they're pushing back. Did you think you were going to get out of this unscathed? And I'm saying to you, my Magi's, if you're going to follow truth, if you're going to live truth, if you're going to preach truth, do you think you're going to get out of this unscathed? Do you really think so? Living in a corrupt society as this Western world. Because you are target numero uno. Do you understand? You are dangerous to the established quo. You have a target on your back and you don't realize it. The mere fact you choose to have a vegan diet makes you dangerous to the meat industry. Oprah Winfrey got sued just by saying, meat disgusts me. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what she said. And the entire meat industry got together and took her to court. So what do you think they'll do to you? And Oprah's a billionaire. So what do you think they're going to do to you? You're not going to get out of this unscathed. This is why God gave you Harukuhuti, God of war. Because within you, there is the warrior spirit that you must take on. And that warrior spirit will protect you if you know how to recite the right mantra. It is like getting into a ring. As Mike Tyson eloquently said, everybody's got a plan until they get hit. Well, you in that ring boxing and you get hit and you stop and you say, oh, whoa, he hit me. Well, what did you think when you got in that ring? That he wasn't going to hit you? When you go to your pimp pastor preacher and you say, you know, Jesus never really existed, and he excommunicates you from the church, well, what did you think was going to happen when you spoke the truth? Do you think he was just going to embrace you and give you money? Really? Let's keep it real here. You're on a mission. You're on a mission to tear the current structure down, to build a new structure, one built on truth. There could be some casualties. But as a magi, it's incumbent upon you to protect yourself. And how do you protect yourself? Through two means, both under magic. One is You're going to work with spirits, spirits that are powerful and will protect you, and if necessary, fight on your behalf. My Magi's, let us go to the video so that I can illustrate this point better.
In April 1991, a man was found dead in his apartment after a week of telling friends that something was trying to kill him. Did he literally scare himself to death, or was his passing the result of a terrifying curse? Join us this week as we take a look into the peculiar death of Christopher Case. Christopher Case was a small-town radio DJ who had grown up in Richmond, Virginia. He was a well-rounded individual, intelligent, sophisticated, and an absolute fitness zealot who took vitamin supplements daily and exercised religiously. In his early 30s, he decided to move out west to Seattle in Washington State to start a new career as a music executive. He worked for the Muzak Holdings Company, producing the soft music heard in lifts and waiting rooms all over the world. Chris was a popular young man. He had made good friends in his new role and still managed to keep in regular contact with old friends back in Richmond. But despite this, he was a bit of a loner and had remained single for many years. This is not strange in itself. His job required him to travel all over the United States, and he had a real passion for music, particularly compositions of the ancient world. Chris's idea of a good time was sitting at home listening to his favourite tracks, rather than going out to socialise of an evening. He found solace in the arrangements of notes and harmonies, rather than in the company of others. He didn't want for much. He didn't bother other people, and in return, other people didn't bother him. And it is for this reason that nobody who knew him has ever been able to understand the week in the summer of 1991, which would ultimately end in tragedy. On the morning of Thursday, the 18th of April, Chris was found dead in his apartment. There was no sign of a struggle having taken place or of forced entry. His body was discovered fully clothed, sitting inside his empty bathtub in a kneeling position, with his head resting against the wall. It appeared as though he had simply fallen asleep and passed away. But when police officers searched the residence, they found a multitude of crucifixes, books on the occult, and saw that salt had been poured at the entrance to his home and along every single skirting board inside his apartment. They also heard religious music playing quietly in a number of rooms. At the scene, the coroner was able to determine that Mr. Case had died of heart failure. He was just 35 years old. Whilst the circumstances surrounding Chris's death and the state in which his apartment had been found were indeed odd, to say the least, the story which transpired over the following months of the investigation read like something straight out of a paranormal thriller. Shortly after his passing, Friends reported that, in the days leading up to his death, Chris had called them in a panic on numerous occasions, saying that something was after him and that he feared for his life. He told friends that he was certain he would be dead before the end of the week. This baffled authorities, and what was originally thought to have been a death by natural causes would take on a much more sinister twist. After weeks of looking into the case, investigators discovered a very chilling side to this story. As it turned out, on the 11th of April, 7 days before his death, Chris had embarked on a business trip to San Francisco, meeting with other executives within the music industry. At some point during his visit, he'd been introduced to an older woman who shared his passion for music of the ancient world, particularly that of Egypt and other Mediterranean civilizations. They seemed to have a lot in common, and as their conversation progressed, it became clear to Chris that this woman wished to pursue a romantic relationship with him. She made no secret of her feelings and asked him to take her home on more than one occasion. Being a man of integrity, he politely declined these requests. She was an attractive lady, but her intensity had unnerved the young executive. This, coupled with the fact that she was at least 20 years his senior, led Chris to suggest that they call it a night and go their separate ways. But this only seemed to anger her. She felt the full force of his rejection and then said something strange. She told him that she was a witch, that she would put a curse on him, and that he would be sorry. She told him that he would be dead within a week. Chris, who thought of himself as a rational individual, simply shrugged this off. He did not believe in the paranormal or supernatural, and he was not religious in any sense of the word. So he disregarded her threats and travelled back to Seattle the next day. He would relate this tale to his friend Sammy Sauder upon his return, who would dismiss it with the same supposed rationality. And certainly, at least for the first few days after his return home, he completely forgot about the entire incident. However, on the morning of the 14th of April, Chris called Sammy in a panic, saying that he had been kept awake all night by the sound of whispering voices coming from somewhere inside his home, though he could not find the source. He would also go on to say how he had seen shadows moving around his apartment, even though he was the only one there, and that he felt like he was being watched during the night. This conversation would be the first of 3 frantic phone calls that Chris would make to Sammy over the next few days. On the 16th, he called to tell her that something had attacked him during the night. He had woken to find himself paralysed, being throttled by unseen hands. The attack was particularly intense and violent, the force of it lifting him off his mattress before releasing him and throwing him back onto his bed. Afterwards, he had noticed tiny cuts on the ends of each one of his fingers, and that his bedsheets were stained with his blood. This instance would prove to be too much, and on the morning after, he visited a religious bookstore called Evangel Incorporated. The store manager, Rodney Higuchi, described how Chris had entered the store, walked over to one of the displays, and picked up a handful of crucifixes. Mr. Higuchi asked him how he intended to use them, and Chris told him what he believed to be the truth of the matter, that he was being attacked by paranormal entities and that he needed to defend himself. Rodney assisted as best he could and recommended a number of books on the subject of fighting witchcraft. Between his visits to the bookstore and his calls to concerned friends, Chris had begun a determined effort to fend off whatever mysterious forces had been tormenting him, and by the afternoon of the 16th, the battle lines had been drawn. He had placed a number of crucifixes around his home, which were interspersed with candles, and he had poured lines of salt along the extremities of each room, leaving small piles in each corner. He had also written many notes on methods of combating evil spirits, which which were scattered throughout his apartment. It had been less than a week since his meeting with the strange woman, but Chris was a changed man, barely recognisable compared to the confident, rational young executive he had been only days beforehand. This was an obsessed individual, determined to the point of it being detrimental to his health. He wasn't sleeping, and he had not shown up for work in 2 days. He called other friends besides Sammy, and they would describe how they could hear in his voice how utterly afraid he was. And unfortunately for Chris, the evening of the 16th would be his most harrowing experience to date. It is not exactly clear what happened during the course of the night, but something frightened him so much that he left his home during the early hours of the morning and stayed at a hotel. Because of this, Sammy could not get through to him the next morning. Her only recourse was to call a local police department and ask them to do a welfare check on Chris's property. Upon arrival, they found the premises locked and were unable to get access. They left the scene and reported their findings back to a concerned Sammy. Living on the other side of the country, she felt distraught and helpless as to what else she could do, and had no other choice but to wait to hear from Chris. That evening, she came home to find a message stored on her answering machine. Little did she know it in that moment, but this would be the last time she ever heard from her friend. To her surprise, there was an eerie calm to the young man's voice, almost as if he had resigned himself to his fate. In the message, he spoke about how they had almost got him the night before, and that he believed this would be his last night on Earth. Sammy wouldn't be the only person to hear from Chris that day, however. He had also visited a Catholic priest in the afternoon, and later on, he had returned to Evangel Incorporated. On this occasion, Rodney Higuchi described how Chris had looked exhausted but desperate, and that he had asked for more advice on how to defend himself, which the store manager was only too happy to provide. Despite Chris's best efforts, he would lose his life on the night of the 17th of April, 1991. Myocarditis was listed as the official cause of death in the coroner's report, a sudden and seemingly inexplicable stopping of the heart. So did Christopher Case somehow manage to convince himself that he had been cursed and then literally scare himself to death? Or was there something far more mysterious and sinister at work? The jury is still out, even after all this time. Myocarditis is a rare but potentially deadly disease, affecting 1 in every 100,000 people. It is not hereditary and therefore not based on one's genetic makeup. It can afflict anyone at any time, but most commonly occurs in people between the ages of 20 and 40. It is not unheard of for myocarditis to strike young men and women who are otherwise fit and healthy, and in fact, it has been the cause of many sudden deaths in young athletes around the world. Some medical experts have also suggested that there is a link between the disease and man-made supplements such as vitamins or steroids, which they believe could aggravate an existing condition. With this in mind, it is important to remember that Christopher Case was a fitness enthusiast. He went to the gym to exercise daily. He also took vitamin supplements, and at the age of 35, he was well within the scope of being affected by this disease. However, close friends and relatives of Mr. Case are not so quick to just accept the possibility that he died of natural causes. First of all, there are a variety of other symptoms which usually manifest in sufferers of myocarditis, such as chest pain, difficulty breathing, and general fatigue. Furthermore, before a fatal attack such as this, the sufferer will usually display flu-like symptoms in the weeks leading up to their death. Chris experienced none of these things. He was an otherwise fit and healthy young man with a top-notch immune system. And then there is the small matter of Chris's mental state during those last 5 or 6 days. As we have already established, he was a stable individual and not prone to such flights of fancy regarding the paranormal. So why did he suddenly and inexplicably change? Is it really possible for someone to go from being a sane, rational young man one day, only to change to a desperate and obsessed wreck of a man the next? It makes absolutely no sense. Finally, we are faced with the fact that Chris knew he was going to die. He predicted it with alarming accuracy, saying to his friend Sammy on the 17th that he knew he would not last the night. What are the chances of an otherwise fit, healthy, and mentally stable young man dying of natural causes after a week of saying to friends that he feared for his life? One has to wonder whether there is more to this than meets the eye. Whatever happened during that week back in April of 1991, Chris truly believed that he was being haunted and ultimately hunted by something utterly sinister and horrific enough to literally scare him to death. After days of being tormented and tortured at the hands of who knows what, he finally succumbed to his fears and left behind a tantalizing mystery, which will probably never be solved. You may be wondering why the police never followed up on the identity of the woman who supposedly put this curse on him, but his death was never seen as suspicious, and so it did not warrant that kind of investigation. Besides, Chris took her name with him to the grave. Whether he died of a terrifying curse, or whether it was simply all in his head, this case is no less heartbreaking for those who are close to Chris, and we can only hope that he rests in peace.
Well, there we go. Spooky, isn't that? So, what I want you to understand is there are people who do have such a high degree of magical power that they can invoke spirits, demons to do you harm. But that's not what we're concerned with today. So, what we're going to talk about real briefly is the fact that when someone is looking to do you harm, there are means and measures that you can take to protect yourself. I'm just going to recommend one book, Magical Protection by Damon Brand. This is a really interesting book. There are many books on magical protection. Now, um, one of the things I'm going to do for my Patreon supporters is I am going to make a video and it'll be posted tomorrow. It'll be a detailed video on how to invoke benevolent spirits, spirits that can help protect you and help go out there and keep you out of harm's way. So I'm going to detail that in the video, and I'm also going to detail how to use crystals as instruments of magical protection and also to attract wealth for you. So those two videos will be on Patreon. If you're a Patreon supporter, you'll automatically get those videos. If you're not a Patreon supporter, you should consider becoming one because we're going to really get into the nuts and bolts of this and working with the spirits that you will command and they will give you protection. And there are also spirits that you can invoke that will give you luck, should you need it. That's very important. What I want you to understand is that we are magicians. And when there are people out there who are looking to harm us or do us harm, we have magical means to fall back on. We don't always have to confront the individual, to get into a physical altercation, to file a police report, because sometimes that doesn't work. We can fall back on our magic. And this is what our ancestors did, in spite of what you read in the history books during slavery. We did invoke certain spirits that did kill the slave owners. But you don't read a lot about that because they don't want you to know about that. We invoked lots of spirit, especially when you get to Haiti. All right, the Haitian Revolution was started all around voodoo and the invoking of spirits to kill those slave owners. So you are very powerful, and we're talking about a positive energy, not a negative energy that you can invoke on your behalf. So look for that video on Patreon so we can get into the details of that. And realistically, all of you should have crystals, and you should have different crystals for different occasion. One can be very protective energy, another one could be a very offensive energy, another one could be to attract wealth, another one can be to attract love, because crystals harness energy. They harness your energy. Who's ever touching the crystal will absorb the energy, and it will last for a very long time. And anyone coming in contact with that energy, whether it's for to bring them luck or to do them to invoke justice, will feel it and will experience it, and it's very powerful in that way. And then, of course, the book again has certain spells that you can fall back onto, um, that you can invoke these spells to help. But I will be covering, like I said, all this in the Patreon video. And lastly, if you have not received your Kemetic name, think about signing up for a Kemetic name, because the Kemetic name is your mantra. It can bring you success in this lifetime. And I already talked about the Queen Hatshepsut. That's a Kemetic name. And when you recite that name, you're giving that person energy. So her spirit still exists, and we're giving her energy. And she was a powerful, wonderful woman that we should be paying respect to, because history, there's yet to be a movie about her. So we need to think about that. So get your Kemetic name. And also, if you have not received your 2020 New Year reading, you should do that so you know what to expect in the new year. So that's going to be something that you should look at doing, because it will forecast to you if there's trouble ahead, and then you'll know how to deal with it. All right. So I want to thank you, Magi, for jumping in here and to taking an opportunity to get a little bit deeper into this subject. Remember, I'm going to be covering this information about invoking justice. And remember, we're not looking so much for revenge. We're looking for to bring back balance into a situation, because there's disharmony. You see, in a traditional African environment, when somebody was doing wrong, the high priest would look at what's not going right with the nation, because the nation produced that individual. And if that individual is doing wrong, then it's something that the nation did wrong. Do you understand? That's how it should be done. But in this backwards, corrupt Western society, if someone's doing wrong, they look at them and they call them names, a criminal. For example, when you have the masses of African Americans who live in abject poverty and then become addicted to drugs, because the CIA pumps drugs into the minority communities, and then we start calling them names, criminals, thugs. But then when white young boys get addicted to opioids, they need help. They need counseling. Let's get funding to give them counseling. You see what a sick society we live in, and how they play that civic truth or mistruth by labeling things differently. They're still not willing to admit to society that cigarettes is a drug that is dangerous, but it's legal. You know what I mean? So again, join us for that Patreon session where we will be going over invoking a spirit to help you, protect you, and fight on your behalf. That's the way our ancestors did it, and that is the way we should be doing it. We should not be afraid of the afterlife. We should not be afraid of spirits. They are our departed family. They are our ancestors. So there is nothing to be afraid, because they're family. Thank you for joining me. And I'm going to go still light out there and have some fun. This is Gasankma Keperu, son of Maat and Tahuti. Maat is beautiful goddess Heteru. Until my next video, Amun Ra.